Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we got to talk about this debate that happened on Piers Morgan between Cenk and a guy that I never heard of. He may be a crazy person outside of this debate, so I give that caveat right now, Rabbi Shmuley. And the reason we want to talk about this is because this guy handled Cenk better than almost anybody I've seen oppose him, and Cenk reveals himself and betrays himself repeatedly throughout this conversation. And by the way, don't think I haven't noticed this rhetoric on the Young Turks with the way that he speaks about Jewish people in relation to Israelis. It is quite interesting. It is quite hilarious once you pick up on it. He's actually done this before to somebody who works at TYT, which again, we will talk about throughout the course of this video. But before we do, it's sponsored. Let me toss it to the sponsor, but you definitely want to come back over here so we can discuss it on the other side. The US national debt spike could mean a long-term boom for gold. Since March of 2020, the federal government has added $8 trillion, that's trillion with the T, to the national debt, and now interest payments on that debt supersede $1 trillion. On top of that, we have international organizations like BRICS and oil-rich nations meeting and having discussions about potentially moving away from the petrodollar. This could spell an absolute disaster and economic hardship for Americans for years to come. This is one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be partnering with National Gold Group. You can help secure your investments by backing up your retirement with precious metals. Buying gold and silver is a strategic hedge against potential future disaster, and especially when we're in a nation where 51% of Americans can't pay their credit cards, and the Build Back Better spending agenda is supposed to raise the national debt all the way through the year of 2024. Do yourself a favor and call National Gold Group at 866-826-2603 so that you can talk over your options. Make sure you mention the channel Actual Justice Warrior so that they know that I sent you. Again, that number is 866-826-2603. Call them and learn about protecting your investments today. There is always a risk with any investments, and prior performance is not a guarantee of future results.
In the UK and US is calling for humanitarian pauses in Gaza. Many other countries in the Middle East are demanding a full ceasefire. Israel has ruled out a ceasefire while Hamas holds around 240 hostages who were kidnapped during the deadly terror attacks on October the 7th.
Now, I just want to say, to Piers Morgan's credit on this particular issue, he is one of the few former mainstream media voices. He's on some weird network that I'm not all that familiar with, who consistently platforms the pro-Palestinian voices on his show. And I think that's important because when you hear these people talk, when you hear them speak, when you hear them state their position, for me, it creates a moral clarity on this issue, because oftentimes, let's be honest, in American media, we're getting just the pro-Israeli side with a little sprinkles of anti-Israeli sentiment. But these guys, in their own voice, really go to show you exactly who these people are and exactly what they stand for. So credit where credit is due for Piers for setting this up, for doing the other interviews with other pro-Palestinian voices. But without further ado, we got to get into this because this rabbi handles Cenk so well, and it's absolutely hilarious.
On Sunday, the Pope made an urgent plea to stop the conflict, saying, "I pray to you to stop in the name of God, cease the fire." So with so much bloodshed, is it time for a ceasefire?
So first and foremost, right off the bat, because Piers brought it up in his intro and this is what they're going to be talking about, I am not in favor in any way, shape, or form of a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. Yes, civilians are being killed. Yes, it's absolutely horrible. But in reality, if ceasefires led to peace, then this would be the most peaceful region on planet Earth. The fact of the matter is, all ceasefires do, and I will link an essay explaining this theory to you guys in the description of this video, is prolong this conflict. It may save some people in the short term, but in reality, if you constantly lower the consequences for aggression from one side, you're going to continuously get aggression from that side. If the people of Hamas felt like they would be annihilated if they started a war with Israel, they would be much more hesitant in starting that war with Israel. The fact of the matter is, they know that the international community, they know that a huge portion of the American population, they know that all the Arab nations will eventually call for a ceasefire when they start losing the fighting too much, and that is a backstop for them something for them to rely on, and they know for a fact, because of this international pressure, because of these consistent ceasefires, that they will live to fight another day. They will be able to launch attacks in the future, and the same cycle will repeat. So no, I'm not in favor of trying the same exact thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I'm in favor of the Israeli military wiping out Hamas. Period, point blank. That's where I'm at on this issue, and I think the case for this is overwhelming in terms of its evidence.
Absolutely. I think that they've murdered enough Palestinian civilians. And even Netanyahu, in an interview with ABC News, said, now that we're on the ground, we're finally pressuring Hamas on hostages. Oh, so the 7,000 bombs you dropped were totally useless and collective punishment, and your attempt to murder civilians on purpose as some sort of sick vengeance. So please stop the murders. Ceasefire right now.
So, of course, after I state my position eloquently and beautifully, Cenk Uygur comes out with that absolute nonsense where he's in favor of a ceasefire because Cenk is on team Palestinian, and he knows for a fact that if Israel actually fought the war the way that they should fight a war, the way that wars were fought throughout all of history, then the Palestinian cause, Hamas's cause, would be gone. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that Cenk Uygur supports Hamas. He's made it quite clear, much clearer than other lefties, that he does not. However, he just completely misconstrued Benjamin Netanyahu's quote, who you might not like out there in the audience. And by the way, a lot of people in the Israeli population don't like him. They blame him for the 10/7 attacks, to say that Benjamin Netanyahu somehow admitted that the bombing campaign did absolutely nothing and only the ground troops are what's actually working.
And even Netanyahu, in an interview with ABC News, said, now that we're on the ground, we're finally pressuring Hamas on hostages. Oh, so the 7,000 bombs you dropped were totally useless and collective punishment, and your attempt to murder civilians on purpose.
And that's collective punishment and all these other talking points when you guys know for a fact, if you were to ask him what he meant, if you were to see that quote in its full context, it would be in no way, shape, or form as Cenk just presented it. But that's what Cenk does. He lies, he misconstrues, stuff gets garbled in his brain, and it's on display, and he's serving it up on a plate for the rabbi.
Cenk is polling in the Democratic presidential primaries at 0%, nothing. He has a greater likelihood of being elected the new king of France. And don't interrupt me, please. And the reason is that the American people are decent. They understand that Cenk's anti-Semitism, which he has voiced on your show repeatedly, calling Jews genocidaires, and this is the eve of Kristallnacht, the 85th anniversary of the start of the Holocaust. He would deny the Jewish people the only dignity left to us, that we were victims of genocide, and he would say that we are the Nazis, we are the Gestapo, for simply wanting to defend ourselves against the brutality and the savagery of Hamas. Cenk. You'll have your turn. Just show some decency. If you're not going to show it to my people, show it to me and show it to the viewers of the show.
So right off the bat, the guy comes out swinging against Cenk Uygur. He starts attacking him for polling at 0% in the polls, and you could tell Cenk is already aggravated. And by the way, right now, this is the difference between Cenk hosting somebody on his own show versus being a guest on somebody else's show. And you could see he actually can't, despite all his talk about fighting back strong, deal with somebody who's just going to walk up to him and slap him in the face in the way that this rabbi does. Love the fact that he brought up his polling numbers, the fact that he's not going to be president of the United States, and all that. Honestly, Cenk barely even talks about the fact that he's running for president, allegedly, of the United States of America. So this is all fun stuff, but it gets even better because he then points to the Young Turks' name, which we talked about extensively on this show.
But who is surprised that a man? Who is surprised that a man the name of whose podcast is Young Turks, who perpetrated the Armenian genocide? The Young Turks is like calling your podcast the Young Nazis, the Young Gestapo. They killed 1.5 to 2 million Armenians between 1915 and 1918. The Armenian community has begged Cenk to change the name of his show. For the first half of his life, he was a complete Armenian genocide denier. Then he changed. Now he is a Holocaust denier because he is saying that the Jews are engaged in a genocide of the Palestinians. Now, which nation? How can there be 1.8 million Muslim Arab citizens?
Rabbi Shmuley, okay. I'm going to go to Cenk. You said some very...
So the rabbi hits Cenk with the fact that his show is named The Young Turks. The Young Turks are the perpetrators of the Armenian genocide, which, by the way, committed a crime against humanity that was so bad, we came up with a word for it. That word happens to be genocide. And as we talked about on this channel multiple times, despite Cenk claiming that the Young Turks gets its name because in an urban dictionary it means young progressives, Cenk actually had the domain for the Young Turk and for the Young Turks prior to him being a progressive, when he was a Republican, and when he was actively denying the Armenian genocide. So make no mistake about it, the timeline is clear and linked in the description. Cenk did in fact name it after the organization that he used to deny committed the Armenian genocide, period, point blank. It's an absolute fact, and the rabbi nails him on that. Now, Cenk's retort, hilarious.
And in terms of the Armenian genocide, there is a powerful analogy there. Why was it a genocide? And yes, it was a genocide. Why? Because they moved and displaced so many people and killed civilians on the way. What is Israel doing? Moving and displacing millions of people and killing innocent civilians. It is the exact definition of a genocide.
So this is an objectively ridiculous position from Cenk. First and foremost, in the Armenian genocide, and you can watch history videos on this, read about it for yourself, the Turks deported Armenians to the sea, to the desert. They forced them onto death marches, and that resulted in the death of 1.5 million Armenians. Under the contrary example, which is Israel and Gaza, the population of Gaza has exploded. It's nearly doubled. And we're talking about deaths in terms of around 10,000 at this point in time. And those deaths, even the civilian deaths, which are in fact tragic and very unfortunate as a consequence of war, is a response to an attack from that side, from Hamas, the governing body of the Gaza territory. There was no such attack, no such provocation, no such justification for the Armenian genocide. So no, Cenk, you're wrong on scale, you're wrong on intent, you're wrong on purpose. Having the people of Gaza go a couple of miles south, which is what was asked, we actually did a Google map on it. It was an 8-minute drive, it was like 2 hours or 2.5 hours in terms of a walk, is not the same thing as the Young Turks, the organization that Cenk loves so much he named his show for it, deporting people into the Mediterranean Sea and then bombing them as they were in the Mediterranean Sea. It's not the same thing as forcing them on a death march in the desert.
So I think the Jewish people are an amazing people, and their culture is beautiful, and I don't tolerate any anti-Semitism. But I think that the occupation is decaying the moral core of Israel. How long are you going to oppress these people?
But Cenk,
and I know this guy, all he wants to do is an ad hominem attack. He's a liar. And you could tell exactly what kind of indecent human being he is. But the main reason he's doing it is to avoid the topic. When are you going to stop murdering Palestinians and cheerleading it?
Okay.
If you're talking about genocide, you're the one right now doing the genocide.
So normally when I talk about people on the left and their position on the Israel-Gaza conflict and how they overwhelmingly side with the Palestinians, despite the fact that they have illiberal or anti-progressive values, I explain it to you guys as not being about anti-Semitism. It's actually about this oppressor dynamic. It's about being anti-America, anti-American foreign policy, and since Israel happens to be the ally of the United States, that's why they go out of their way to condemn them. However, for Cenk, at least a little bit, and if I can borrow a term from the left-wingers, a little bit subconsciously, it is an issue of Islam versus Judaism, of Jews versus Muslims. And one of the ways that you could tell that is here you have a rabbi, an American rabbi, and Cenk is not accusing Israel of committing the genocide. He's not accusing Israel of killing the Palestinians. He's accusing the rabbi. He's saying, when are you going to stop this? When are you going to stop killing civilians?
How long are you going to oppress these people?
But Cenk,
and I know this guy, all he wants to do is an ad hominem attack. He's a liar. And you could tell exactly what kind of indecent human being he is. But the main reason he's doing it is to avoid the topic. When are you going to stop murdering Palestinians and cheerleading it?
Okay.
If you're talking about genocide, you're the one right now doing the genocide.
Which is extensively tying a Jewish citizen in the United States of America to the actions of the Israeli government, showing that Cenk, at least in his brain, does not see the distinction right here. And by the way, this is very common among people who are raised in Islamic households, even though Cenk is now an atheist, for them to connect this as they're on team Muslim and the other side is anti-Muslim. It happens to be Jews, therefore they hate that side. That's what we're seeing from Cenk right here. And if you don't believe me, this has actually happened before. In a debate with Anna Kasparian related to Azerbaijan, who by the way are Turks, a Turkish ethnic group, attacking territory in Armenia, or territory where Armenians exist and have lived for a long period of time, he used the same same kind of verbiage about Anna being the person behind the bad things that Armenians did.
To talk about the fact that we have ethnic Armenians who have been living there literally for centuries, living their lives, not doing anything wrong, literally doing nothing wrong, and they're being attacked. Their churches are being bombed. Their hospitals are being bombed.
Did we note that Armenia invaded in the first place? Did we note that?
Armenians were already there.
Did we note that they also did ethnic cleansing when they first came in?
Jake, that land was handed over to Azerbaijan, okay, by Stalin, because Stalin was hoping that Turkey would become an ally. And that didn't work out for Stalin. And because of what Stalin did, Armenians are suffering the consequences of his decisions from decades ago. Okay? The innocent civilians are dying as a result of that. Yeah.
Only innocent Armenians, right? No innocent Azerbaijanis.
Well, they're going to defend themselves, Cenk.
Oh,
what do you want them
so
to
when
do?
Azerbaijan defends itself, it's not defending. When Armenia defends itself, it's defense.
Azerbaijan has broken every single ceasefire that they have agreed to. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. They have broken every single ceasefire that they have agreed to. Every single one of them. Every single one of them.
Wait,
they have
who broke the
agreed
United
to.
Nations
Every single one of them.
Not the Armenian government or the Armenian people that are living in that area, despite the fact that Anna, although ethnically Armenian, is an American.
May I respond?
Yes. Go ahead, more lies. Go ahead.
You know, I've spent my life debating people. Whenever someone starts using personal names and screaming like a lunatic, they're losing the debate. Let me remain factual.
You're the one who made up things. The Palestinians were offered a state in 1936 in the Peel Commission. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 1947, the UN Partition Plan. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 1967 after Israel conquered Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 2000, Yasser Arafat, Ehud Barak. They rejected it. They were offered a state with Ehud Olmert 2008. They rejected it. Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza in 2005. And they did not create a state. In fact, where were you, Cenk, when you say that you care about Palestinian children? When Hamas stole the highest rate of per capita international foreign aid, larger than the Marshall Plan, from Palestinian children, did not build schools for them, did not build hospitals, took all the money to buy bombs and to build a network of tunnels, which is larger than the New York subway system. Where were you then?
Look at how angry Cenk is at this guy spitting facts in his direction. Now, you could say that these deals weren't good enough for the Palestinians. You could say that they had reasons to reject them. But the idea that this all did not happen, that they didn't reject each and every one of these offers for a two-state solution, is absurd on its face. They all 100% happened. In fact, in a later on debate on his own network versus the Jewish guy, Cenk acknowledges that they happened, but Cenk is saying, oh, well, they're not good enough, and here's a reason why they should have rejected them, and here's why it's not fair, and all of that. But here, you see him idiotically nodding his head no, as if this isn't a matter of historic fact.
Why did you only come up now? In fact, when Bashar al-Assad killed 600,000 children, Arab children, when he gassed them with mustard gas, my organization took out full-page New York Times ads to protect them from sarin gas. Where were you then? You don't care about Arab children.
Now, to be fair to Cenk, he did actually talk about Syria. So the rabbi is kind of just saying things that are not necessarily true right here. However, Cenk's talk about Syria is quite similar to his talk about any issue in the Middle East, where he blames the United States, American foreign policy, and all of that. That being said, there were instances where Cenk was quite hawkish on the Syria issue. He was against Bashar al-Assad. He did criticize them. So here's not the most fair position for the rabbi to just assert without the evidence to back it up. Now, did he cover Syria in the way that he's covering Israel-Palestine? Absolutely not. No way. Did he condemn Syria as hard as he's condemning Israel? Absolutely not. No way. He's clearly and obviously more passionate about this particular issue. However, that's all just prelude. That's just me giving you the facts and the context and trying to be fair to Cenk. Cenk's response to this? Hilarious.
You are a Jew hater, defined as someone who only wants to lie and say that the Jews are genocidaires. And don't try to cancel me and say that I shouldn't be on. You're not a producer of this show. Because you are ignorant of the facts and ignorant of the history does not mean that you can cancel my voice.
Cenk, your response.
Yeah, Cenk just yells, "Shut up, you bigot." And then he says, "You're racist," because Cenk actually has no retorts. He's not in control of the conversation. He's upset at this. This is why he told Piers earlier to not let this guy on the show. And this guy is handling Cenk. He's eating his lunch right now. And Cenk looks ridiculous. He looks absurd on this. He looks like he's steaming on this because the rabbi is nailing him to the wall on the most important point. Cenk has an irrational hatred for the state of Israel. He is clearly seeing this as a Muslims versus Israeli issues. He talks about the Palestinians as in us, as in him, people like him. He means Muslims in that regard, even though he's an atheist. And he ties this guy to Israel because he's Jewish. Obviously, Cenk is making ethnic connections here while calling everybody else a bigot, and it's hilarious to see in real time.
This guy is a full-blown bigot. He's one of the most racist people I have ever seen, does not value Palestinian lives at all. And everything he said about me is 100% untrue. I was vicious in my criticism of Bashar al-Assad. I've criticized Hamas over and over again, and I think what they did in the attack against Israel was reprehensible. But for God's sake, how long are you going to occupy these people?
Again, notice Cenk's tactic. Bigot, racist, all that nonsense. But then Cenk comes out with a bigoted, kind of racist position, depending on how you view anti-Semitism, where he starts talking about when this guy, Rabbi Shmuley, is going to stop occupying the Palestinians. He did the same thing to Anna in their Azerbaijan thing, and he did the same thing to Dennis Prager.
But no, you're literally preventing them from having a state. So since you are preventing them, doesn't that make you a monster who doesn't believe in freedom? And that all of your empty talk about, how much you love freedom is total garbage because you don't think it applies to Palestinians.
You have a weird way of thinking.
Great answer. Go ahead. Go ahead. Why can't the Palestinians have the same freedom that every other human being has?
If you allow me to speak, I'll tell you why it's weird. You believe there is a moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas. That is morally sick.
You are sick for not allowing Palestinians, millions of them, to be free. You don't believe in freedom, Dennis. You believe in oppression as long as it's on your side. Why can't they be free? Why can't Palestinians be free? Because they will choose a government you don't agree with?
If anybody's seeing this along ethnic lines, despite the fact what Cenk is saying outwardly, his verbiage betrays him, it's Cenk Uygur, and it couldn't be more clear.
Cenk, all this guy wants to do is more murder of Palestinians.
Cenk, let me ask
when are you going to let them go?
Again, when are you going to let them go? Rabbi, when are you going to let them go? Very interesting rhetoric right there from Cenk, who completely doesn't see a difference between Jews and Muslims. Very interesting how he phrases that.
What Hamas is actually in its charter dedicated to doing is the purest personification of genocide. Well, it is. They want to see the eradication of Israel, and they proved on October the 7th they will kill as many Jews as they can possibly get their hands on. So that is pure genocide. What Israel is doing in return, I don't think meets the category of genocide. Right, because they don't want to get rid of every Palestinian. They don't want to kill every Palestinian.
No,
they want to kill every Hamas terrorist. Now, there are legitimate question marks about how they're going about this and about the civilian casualties. But there is a moral distinction between what Hamas is dedicated to doing and what Israel is dedicated to doing, isn't there?
No. First of all, Hamas is a bunch of idiots. They should take that stuff out of their charter. All it does is hurt the Palestinian cause.
I agree.
There's no call for it. It's dumb and it's immoral.
So one of the things that you'll notice is that Cenk's criticism of Hamas is both brief and incredibly stupid. He talks about how Hamas is hurting the Palestinian cause, the Palestinian goals, and how they're just idiots and all that. But the thing is, they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. They want to wipe out all of the Israelis, all of the Jewish people in Israel. And by the way, even if the majority of people in the Palestinian territories didn't support Hamas, which by the way, polling shows that they do, they actually do support that goal. The number one option for these people is not the two-state solution when they're polled. An absolute majority of them support taking over all of historic Palestine, which means every inch of Israel. Their number two option is a one-state solution where, haha, wink, wink, the Muslims and the Jews live equally, and their number three option is a two-state solution. So Cenk is pretending that they just want a Palestinian state that is in and around Israel, but in reality, the majority of the people want Israel gone. And you could say you understand that or whatever. You could say that the majority of people aren't as extreme as Hamas, and there's some truth in that. But in reality, they're not hurting the Palestinian cause. This is the Palestinian cause, which is to kill as many Jews as possible. The two-state solution is something that the Israelis would want historically, even if Bibi Netanyahu's government doesn't want that right now, and something that the Americans want, and all presidents end up wanting because they want to be the one to say that they negotiated peace in this area. But to be clear, the reason the Palestinians have rejected a state 7 times, the reason that Hamas was the elected government in Gaza, is because that's not what the majority of the people want. It's an absolute fact, and unless we acknowledge the reality, there's no way to negotiate peace in this area.
But Hamas claims that they would like to do these things, and from time to time they do these attacks that are horrible and they should never do. But Israel actually kills Palestinians, actually occupies Palestine, actually denies the Palestinians a state. So there's this absurd talk of like, oh, if Hamas was super powerful, they might deny Israel its existence. Except Israel does exist. And the Palestinian state does not exist because Israel is blocking their state. So stop using, and I'm not saying it to you, Piers, but this propaganda.
So this is another stupid point from Cenk, and it's often made by many people on the left when you bring up the fact that Hamas's stated goals are what they are. The polling in the Palestinian territories is what it is, which is, oh, they don't have the power to do that. But remember what these people said about the very few in the population that showed up to Charlottesville, the alt-right types, the neo-Nazi types, that they need to be dealt with, they need to be surveilled by the FBI, they need to be censored and restricted in all these different ways, even though objectively, Hamas has more power in the Gaza Strip than any alt-right type has in the United States of America, than any neo-Nazi, than any Klansman, or anything like that. So when it's America, in the American context, those fringe beliefs and the genocidal beliefs and the same anti-Semitic beliefs, they're a big deal they need to be concerned with because those beliefs are coming from a largely non-Muslim population. But when it's Muslims, as I said a million times on this channel, all of a sudden the left has no standards because there is no standard, no expectation for Muslims in the Western world, because to have expectations, to expect them to act like everybody else, as I do, to respect them enough to expect them to act like everyone else is somehow Islamophobic. This is the soft bigotry of no expectations on display right here. If any other group in the world that wasn't a Muslim group said that they wanted to wipe out the Jews, Cenk would be calling it out. But since it's Muslims, whoa. They don't have the power to do that right now.
This propaganda, hold on.
You know, Cenk, you and I are almost the same age, and I'm actually quite worried for how upset you get on TV. You got to protect your health. You're just kind of losing it. Now, calm down.
Because I'm upset that you keep advocating
when you
for the
keep
murder
on
of
saying,
civilians.
Cenk, you have
like
to stop yelling. You have to stop screaming, and you need to know the facts. The Palestinians were offered a state 7 times, and they rejected it 7 times. Bill Clinton told Yasser Arafat in 2000, you have made me a failure as president because Israel was giving you 97% of Judea and Samaria and the old city of Jerusalem. And Ehud Barak even offered the Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism, and the Palestinians rejected it. You simply don't know the history. Read a book. In fact, read a Wikipedia article before you get on TV.
Again, this is a great point by the rabbi. I know people out there in the audience are not fans of Israel. I understand that. I get it. I might disagree with it, but fine. You're allowed to be against countries, even ones that the United States happens to be aligned with. Freedom of speech, freedom of association, and all of that. But what you can't do is deny the facts. The Palestinians have been offered state after state after state by Israel, by the Brits, going back all the way throughout this whole history, and guess what? They rejected it each and every time. Cenk is lying right there by saying that the Israelis are denying them the state. They want the whole territory. The majority of people, not just Hamas, want the whole territory. That is the sticking point. One side keeps fighting, the other side would be happy with the 2-state solution.
Number 2, you know, you made a very good point before, Piers, that Winston Churchill is the greatest British statesman and hero of the 20th century. Let's remember, when Churchill was faced with a genocidal threat of the Nazis, you know what he did, which Israel would never consider doing? He laid waste to 70% of Dresden, Essen, Cologne, Berlin. He eviscerated Germany and turned it into a parking lot, murdering about 6 million German civilians. Israel has never even considered doing 1,000th of that.
So this is 100% true, by the way. Now, obviously, the Holocaust, horrible attack on civilians. The Japanese, absolutely ruthless. The massacre of Nanking, what they did in Korea, all these other things were horrible against civilians. But the Brits and the United States of America, firebombing of Tokyo, and in this instance, the bombing of Dresden.
And FDR acquiesced to it, and he's considered our greatest president of the 20th century. And then Harry Truman dropped 2 atomic bombs on Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So and Israel has nuclear weapons, has never considered doing that. Israel opened up
they've
a
actually,
humanitarian
let me come at you,
begging
Rabbi,
the I have one question.
I want to come back to you on 2 points.
Simple question. Cenk,
I want to ask you a question, Rabbi.
Call Winston Churchill a war criminal on this show today? Will you call Churchill a war criminal?
It should be easy to point out that these are war crimes. It's a consistent, sane person standard, and in fact, it was said and written amongst the documents of the Allies during World War II that basically if they lost the war, they knew that they would be punished as war criminals, even if they didn't use that exact verbiage, because a lot of that came out post-World War II in terms of the rules of war. So yeah, this would be a no-brainer in the United States of America in current year for Cenk to say, but let's see how he responds. Let's see if he takes this no-brainer.
All right, Cenk, answer that question.
Okay, so Rabbi Shmuley, if you're actually a rabbi, the standards of history have changed. So the Mongols went into Baghdad and killed every man, woman, and child, killed 800,000 people, the largest city in the world. Now, we don't live by those standards anymore. And right now, if a modern British prime minister or American president advocated for dropping a nuclear bomb in Japan or killing 70% of the people that live in Dresden, you're damn right I'd call him a war criminal. It's a different situation today than it was in the past. And so what you're saying is, hey, we only murdered 10,000 civilians, and wantonly and recklessly, and we only did a partial genocide, so we're not as guilty. No, I'm not buying it at all.
Rabbi Shmuley, I want to ask you a question.
Okay. This was served up for Cenk on a tee. All he had to say was, yes, that was a war crime. This was acknowledged by the Brits at the time. This was acknowledged by the Americans at the time. But instead, Cenk says that the standards changed after World War II. Isn't that convenient that the standards completely changed right in around the time that the nation of Israel declared its independence? Isn't it funny how that works? How you can kill 70% civilians in the city of Dresden, you could do the firebombing of Tokyo and all of that, and that's one standard, that's whatever, but Israel killing, 10,000 at the time of them doing this video, not even civilians, 9,000 civilians, around 900 militants, even though the Young Turks keeps reporting this absurd 13 number in terms of militants. No, that's even worse because we have standards today, because people didn't know back then that it was bad to bomb a civilian city like Dresden and kill 70% of the people there. Yeah, that's a great argument, Cenk.
Is there any limit, you as a rabbi, of the number of children who need to be killed to get rid of Hamas here, or is there no limit?
Now, Piers asked him if there is a limit to the number of Palestinian civilians that will be killed, and Rabbi Shmuley gives the best answer that you can give while rooting for a particular side in this war.
Of course there's a limit. We mourn the death of every Arab, Muslim, Palestinian child as if a Jewish child died. They are absolutely equal before God. That's why Israel withdrew completely and utterly in 2005, something that Cenk will not even acknowledge. There isn't one Israeli soldier, there wasn't until this new invasion, because of the attack on Sderot. I went to those places. Piers, I was there 2 weeks ago. I saw the blood caked on the walls, congealed to 3 or 4 inches. I saw the knives that were used to murder entire families. We saw the place where Thai, not Jewish, Thai farm workers who were growing pumpkins were beheaded. We saw the body of Shani Luke, and I spoke to her mother, Ricarda, who was taken naked. These are religious men in Hamas, taken naked in her underwear and her bra, her dead body, these necrophilia savages. We saw all that. How many Palestinian children need to die? God forbid, not one. All Hamas needs to do is let the civilian population go south. Stop using them as human shields. Hamas wants these Palestinian children to die. Every Palestinian child to Hamas is a bulletproof vest.
Okay, but you said
they exist for no other reason than to humiliate Israel.
Okay.
Let them go south and be safe.
Okay.
But Hamas wants them.
But Rabbi Shmuley,
it's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault.
Rabbi Shmuley, you did.
But you notice that Cenk, during this answer, is doing winks at the camera when this guy says, yes, Arabs and Israelis are equal before God. Just bad debate tactics, bad form, but Cenk is shook. He's completely unsettled throughout this whole conversation because the rabbi got under his skin immediately, and it's showing right here.
The Jewish people have been oppressed throughout history. My heart goes out to the Jewish people for all the pain and the suffering that they have endured through all of these years. But now Israel, unfortunately, is not the oppressed. It is the oppressor.
So this is such a weird thing for Cenk to say, where he's like, unfortunately now the Jewish people, the Israelis, are the oppressors and not the oppressed, as if it's better for them to be the oppressed in his line of thinking. Interesting verbiage again from Cenk Uygur. And he says, oh, well, it's easy to call for Hamas to surrender and ceasefire and all of that, but we're not going to do that because, again, you don't have equal standards for Muslims and Muslim fighters. Like, where is the call not for them to surrender, but how about to put on a military uniform and go face the IDF in the field? Go be an actual legitimate army instead of these cowards that hide in tunnels, that hide in the shadows, that have to rely on sneak attacks. Where's the call for that? Again, no standard of conduct, no standard of respectability, no standard that they would behave in any way that we would expect a normal army to behave, just because they happen to be an Islamic army and because they know that they'll lose. That's why they don't fight out in the open.
So Hamas is terrible. Yes, I can call for their surrender. That's easy. I don't like Hamas. I think Hamas is Muslim fundamentalist. But it's an impossible standard, and you know they're not going to meet that standard. And because you want to keep killing those civilians to show them how mighty you are and what a great oppressor you are. I'm sick of it. And it's not only ruining the Palestinians and causing their deaths, but it is ruining, it is causing the moral decay of Israel.
Blood libel. This is a blood libel against the Jewish people. You may as well just say that we drink the blood of Christian children in our mouths.
It's not working.
Cenk, you are guilty of a blood libel on the eve of Kristallnacht. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I'm going to call.
It is a blood libel. Change the name of your show away from Young Turks who are genocidaires who killed 1 million Armenians.
I'm going to try and wrestle things back to.
Look, I have resisted calling this group of people or that group of people anti-Semitic, and I actually believe that Cenk, in his heart of hearts, has no problem with Jews, unless, of course, the issue of Israel comes up. But how is this not a blood libel? He keeps saying not Israel is doing this, but this guy, this Jewish guy right in front of him is guilty of this. He wants to kill children. He's into it. I have seen no indication that America's rabbi is the head of the Israeli government, works for the IDF, is in the field fighting people or anything like that. He is introduced as an American rabbi. Obviously, he's super pro-Israel. Everybody understands that. But Cenk does this consistently, where he sees a Jewish guy that is linked to Israel, and he demands that that Jewish person let go of the Palestinians, that that Jewish person stop killing Palestinians. I've never once said Cenk Uygur should stop committing terrorist attacks against Israel because Cenk Uygur's from a Muslim background, because it would be ridiculous of me to do so. But Cenk does that all of the time. It's a go-to move. It's so hard not to notice it once you start noticing it. Now look, I want to know what you guys think. Is Cenk completely unhinged in this regard, or do you think Cenk is right, honorable, true, and justified in his hatred of the state of Israel and possible hatred of the Jewish people, or at least of Jewish people that support the state of Israel, or when Cenk sometimes in his brain garbles the two together and combines them? Let me know down in the comments below. And overall, did you find this as entertaining as I did? If you liked the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Cenk's weirdo moves and getting shut down by this rabbi. Till next time.